how do you host a poetry tea time? It might seem a little overwhelming to you. Luckily, I have got a step-by-step plan for hosting a poetry tea time. If you're new here, I am Aileen. This is Homeschool with the Clarks. I am currently homeschooling 4 kids, ages 12, 10, 8, and 4. Hosting a poetry tea time is a great way to build meaningful connections for yourself and your kids and build a homeschool community. First things first, you need to decide where you're going to host your poetry tea time. For me, I personally prefer to host it in my home. It gives it more of a homey feel, but you could absolutely do it like at a park, or if your local library has rooms that you can utilize, that would be a great place. Once you've decided where you want to host your poetry tea time, then you just need to decide on the date. I prefer early afternoon, not like lunchtime, but like 1 p.m., just because what we tend to eat is more treats than anything. And so that gives people to have an opportunity to eat lunch, but also for them to do school with their kids in the morning if they want to. I found that when I host them in the morning, I get less attendance than when I host them in the early afternoon. Now, you may be wondering like, well, I don't have homeschool communities, so how am I gonna build this homeschool community? And the way that I like to do it is Facebook groups. There are so many Facebook groups out there. And if you can find a Facebook group that's specifically for homeschool families in your area, that is where I would go and start there and just talk to the admin, see if it's okay to create an event, and just create an event directly in that Facebook group. I also reach out to any homeschool families that I know and personally invite them. And then I also just say, like, feel free to bring a friend. For one, that may introduce us to people that aren't in the group, but also may make a new family feel more comfortable if they're able to bring a friend with them. On the invite, I always ask for 2 things. One, I ask people to list the number of kids and adults that are coming, primarily so I can plan for seating. I've never had enough seats for the adults. The children, it's always full. But as long as I can have enough seats for kids, or a little sibling can sit on an older sibling's lap if we have to, that has worked out for us. But it's good to have just an idea of a number, how many will be there. And then the other thing I ask is for people to just sign up for a potluck item to bring. And I always stipulate that if you can't bring a potluck item, please come anyway. I don't want people to not be able to come because they don't have a potluck item to bring. But it's never really been an issue. And then I personally always provide tea, which doesn't really get drank. Some of the moms will drink it. The kids rarely drink it, even though it's a tea time. I always provide tea and insulated paper cups, paper plates, some kind of plasticware, forks or whatever I can scrounge, and then juice for the kids. I have done like hot cocoa, hot apple cider as well. So you could just do whatever you want to do. And maybe you want to do it all tea. That's up to you. But that's what's worked for us. I usually get 2 of the big jugs of apple juice from Walmart and they are gone. They are demolished by the end of the tea time. So that's what I like to provide. I will be the first one. I'll like write a question in the Facebook group, and then I will comment and say, 4 kids. And then I'll say paper products, tea, and apple juice, just so I'm starting the conversation. I'm setting the example. Some people don't comment and they still come, and that's great too, but it just kind of gives me an idea for planning. So now we've got the invite out. We've decided when and where it's going to be. We've started the potluck conversation. Now let's talk about the actual event itself. Now, if you're not accustomed to sharing poetry, or you guys don't read a lot of poetry in your house, that is totally okay. What I like to do on the day of the event is I do have some extra folding tables that I will set out, and folding chairs, and I will take any poetry books that we have in our home and I will just lay them out on the tables so that kids who are not prepared can kind of look through them. And if they want to choose a poem that day, they totally can, or maybe they just look through it and get that exposure. I also don't require anyone to share. And well, except my own children. I do require my children to share, but they're the ones that want me to host the poetry tea time, so they need to share. But they're so used to it now. On our first one of them was a little nervous, but now it's like they're writing their own poetry and they want to go first, and it's a whole thing. So the event happens, let's say it starts at 1 p.m. I usually wait about 30 minutes before I actually officially start the poetry tea time. That gives time for late arrivals to happen, and also for kids and adults to just kind of catch up and socialize for a little while. And then at about 1:30, I'll say, okay, kids, come and make a plate. And I have all the kids come and make a plate if they haven't already, get a drink if they want to, and find a seat at the table. And so they have something to eat while they're listening, because depending on how many kids, it can be, it can be hard for the little ones to sit there. So they have something to do with their hands and with their mouths. And I just invite them to just try and stay seated during this time. And then I often find that there are many kids who want to go first with poetry tea time. Usually there's like 5 or 6 that all raise their hand, they want to go first. So my thing is I think of a number between 1 and 100. And then anyone who wants to guess a number, they can shout out a number, and whoever's closest, we start with them. And then I just go around the table and just whoever's sitting their order. And that works well for us. It keeps it fair, because I don't want to let my kids go first all the time. That's not really fair, but also don't want to never let them go first. I don't want them to feel like they're being singled out because we're hosting. So it's a good way to just keep it fair, and everyone gets to share if they want to. And then we just go around the table, and it's always such a really cool mix of kids who have memorized poetry, kids who have brought their favorite poetry book, kids who have not decided the poem that they want to read until right then, and they're flipping through their book trying to pick a poem, and then kids who have written poems, which is also really, really cool to explore and hear how their progression goes over the years of writing their own poetry, because I've seen that, and that's really, really cool. So we go around the table. I encourage people. Sometimes we've done like snapping after, or else we'll clap after each poem is shared. And then about 3/4 of the way through, some of the kids start to get antsy. They want to get up and refill their plates. And so I'll just gently say, hey, we're almost done. Can you please just sit for a couple more minutes so we can give them that respect and listen to them. And, that works most of the time. And then I just let it go. And then when we're done, I always just congratulate all the kids and tell them that they did a great job and how brave they were to speak in front of other people. And then they just get to play. And then they just, kids go play outside. My son gathers boys for a Nerf war. And, and then it's just a friendly, the moms get to chat, play date, but it's all homeschool families. And how cool is that to be able to have that community? And it's something that I try and do about once a quarter. This year I've really slacked. I just had my first one last week, and it's the end of January. But I hope to have another one in March. They're really, really fun. It can be a little intimidating to host in your home, which is part of why I've kind of put it off, but I did it. You might be worried about like, okay, we did the poetry tea time and now I'm ready for everyone to go home, but they're just sitting around and chatting. My best advice for that is to just get up and start cleaning up. Get the garbage can out, start throwing plates away, start folding up the tables, maybe get the broom out. 2 things will happen. 1, at least some of the moms will come and help clean up or ask what their kids can do to help clean up. And 2, most people will start to pack their things and head out. So that's a really good way to just like say, okay, this event's over now. Thank you for coming. Time to go home. And now you can see that hosting a poetry tea time is not as hard or intimidating as you might think. And it's a great way to connect with your local community.